This time must be different. Let me repeat what I have said and what the most honorable Prime Minister has said. There will be full transparency in this matter. No stone will be left unturned.
Was a press conference in which he reiterated the government's
Welcome
position
to Facts
that there will
TV
be full
News, where
transparency in this
everything
matter.
is true.
No stone will be left
and
unturned.
unease we all feel have been magnified by the long duration, 13 years, over which this fraud was allegedly perpetrated. And the fact that the perpetrator or perpetrators seem to have deliberately and heartlessly targeted elderly persons, as well as our much beloved national icon, Ambassador Usain Bolt. Furthermore, the coverage of this fraud in every major media outlet across the globe is a source of great embarrassment to Jamaicans here and in the diaspora. I feel the full range of emotions: anger, disgust, hurt, and like many Jamaicans, I am deeply pained by these events. This is a body blow to Jamaica and has the unfortunate impact of tarnishing Jamaica's global reputation. And I'm extremely saddened by this. I feel the pain of those who have lost resources on which they were dependent. Over the past 30 years, Jamaica has successfully arrested and prosecute persons who were allegedly criminally responsible during the FinSAC era, neither those criminally responsible for Cash Plus and Olint, Worldwise, and other such schemes. Similarly, persons allegedly responsible for public sector frauds over much of this period have similarly escaped punishment, regularly meted out to others. With that as our historical context, the SSL fraud has touched especially raw nerves, a nerve that represents the reservoir of distrust that has developed based on what many believe to be the historical Jamaican experience of one law for some and another law for others. A nerve that captures the wells of suspicion that white-collar crimes are processed and treated differently from other crimes. A nerve that characterizes the deep pool of cynicism in our country, where there is sometimes a belief that the real truth is artificially suppressed and nothing ever really changes. These waters of distrust, suspicion, and cynicism are existential threats to our society. It will take time to drain the system of these, but we must begin now. This time must be different. Let me repeat what I have said and what the most honorable Prime Minister has said. There will be full transparency in this matter. No stone will be left. The investigative authorities have full operational independence and will pursue the facts wherever they may lead. They will unearth exactly how funds were allegedly stolen, who benefited from such theft, and who organized and collaborated in this. The probe will also seek to identify whether assets have been acquired with the proceeds of this fraud, whether here in Jamaica or overseas. If and when such assets are identified, all legal steps will be taken to restrain these assets with the intention of full forfeiture. Having spoken with some of those leading the investigation, I can say that they are resolute and determined to unravel its complexities and bring all responsible to justice. In fact, based on the magnitude of this fraud and the lines of inquiry being pursued, the Financial Investigations Division and the Fraud Squad have already, last week, sought assistance from the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI, and other international partners. Despite this most unfortunate development, Jamaica's financial sector remains strong. Within the financial sector, we have the banking sector, the securities dealers sector, pensions, insurance, among other operations. Within the security dealer world, there are 38 licensed security dealers operating in Jamaica. Security dealers, according to information from the FSC, had assets under management that exceeded $1.4 trillion as at September 30th of 2022. The assets managed by SSL in all represented a little over 2% of the total assets under management by security dealers. This does not minimize anyone's loss. As I said earlier, this fraud is one of the largest securities frauds in the last 2 decades. The market share information I shared a while ago simply places SSL's demise into a national context. SSL was a relatively small securities dealer, and its problems do not pose a systemic risk to the financial system. There is therefore no need to panic. The financial sector is strong and well capitalized. The financial sector survived the global financial crisis. It survived 2 debt exchanges. It survived the COVID-19 economic shock, the inflation crisis, and it even managed to grow through all of this. Not only is the financial sector strong, it is also resilient. More specifically, the securities dealers industry remains a strong and critical pillar upon which our country, our economy, and our investing public depend. We as a country require a strong and stable and credible securities dealers industry that is ready to operate not only in Jamaica, but on a regional level and an international level to move our country forward. Now, the Financial Services Commission has a board of commissioners appointed by the minister and an executive director appointed by the commission responsible for day-to-day affairs. It is operationally independent in supervisory and regulatory matters, which is the way it was set up, and it is the way we want it to be. You do not want elected officials making prudential nor regulatory decisions. Let me state categorically that in approximately 5 years of service as Minister of Finance and the Public Service, neither the FSC Board of Commissioners nor the FSC Executive Director nor any person from the FSC has ever raised Stocks and Securities Limited, SSL, with me in fulfillment of our commitment to transparency in this matter. The FSC will release the regulatory chronology of SSL for the time period of this fraud from 2010 to 2023. It will release this chronology to the public. However, we should not allow this account from the FSC to distract us from the fact that managers and directors of securities firms have a duty of care to their company and to their clients. And this duty of care is independent of regulatory agencies. The managers and directors cannot be exonerated from that duty of care. They must account for their stewardship of SSL. Furthermore, please recall that the FSC relies on the reports of external auditors and the reports of management of licensees. For example, if an external audit records a balance as an asset on an audited balance sheet, this generally means that the balance ought to be collectible. The chronology of FSC's regulatory action with SSL, regulatory chronology of FSC's interaction with SSL for the 13 years between 2010 and 2023, which coincides with the period of the alleged fraud, will show that SSL was under regulatory scrutiny for much of this period. SSL was under directions from the FSC for the period 2010 to 2013. SSL was under amended directions from the FSC from the period 2013 to the end of August of 2017. SSL was again placed under directions during the period October of 2019 all the way through to the end of 2022. Those directions were never lifted, following the results of an on-site examination in 2019. SSL was placed on additional directions when the fraud became evident in 2023. I asked for the chronology of regulatory actions, and that is what the summary shows. For 10 of the past 13 years, as I mentioned, SSL has been on the directions. Further to the general directions of that period of time, the Board of Commissioners voted to issue a notice of suspension, the most severe sanction, in November of 2016. The media has covered that there was an opportunity to be heard in February of 2017, and the board of the FSC made the decision to accept an undertaking, a board undertaking from SSL to implement specific measures to correct identified deficiencies, which is a legitimate regulatory action prescribed in law, meaning board undertaking is one of the regulatory and supervisory mechanisms that are mentioned in the regulations. SSL was put on enhanced monitoring in June of 2022. Now, an objective review of the chronology of regulatory activity over these 13 years, spanning 3 political administrations, 4 executive directors, Rowan Barnett, Leon Anderson, Janice Holness, and Everton McFarlane, and at least 5 chairpersons, may they rest in peace, from Emile George in 2010, followed by Colin Bullock, who chaired for 4 years between 2012-13 all the way to 2015-16, may they rest in peace, followed by Howard Mitchell in 2016-17, Jackie Stewart Leckler in 2017 to 2021, and John Robinson from 2021 to the present time. Over this entire period, this alleged fraud was being perpetrated. And the information available suggests through the affidavit that that is the case. And other information that has become available suggests that others who have been defrauded, who do not appear on that affidavit, that the theft of their resources would have begun from as early as possibly 2012 or 2013 or thereabouts. To take the Jamaican financial sector to the next level, the government of Jamaica will review the penalty regimes in the Securities Act, the Banking Act, the Insurance Act, and the Pensions Act. We will stiffen the penalties for white-collar crime in the financial sector. The discrepancy between the sanctions for white-collar crime and other forms of crime must be erased. If you rob depositors or you defraud investors, our society, and you put our financial system and our way of life at risk, the Jamaican society wants you put away for a long time. A long, long time. The government of Jamaica will also require security dealers to publish their financial statements and material events at standards equivalent to public companies on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. The government of Jamaica will tighten regulations around connected party transactions for security dealers. The government will introduce a fixed penalty regime where companies can be fined for AML, CFT, and other breaches. And if they fine and if they don't pay, they go to court. What we have now is that authorities have to take companies through the court process, and only then can a fine be imposed. This will improve the sanctions regime and the speed with which sanctions can be applied, and will the difference in time between when an act is allegedly committed and when a sanction is delivered will be greatly shortened with a fixed penalty regime. The government will tighten regulations around insider trading and ensure that the penalty and sanctions regime is severe and dissuasive. The government will tighten regulations in such a manner that ensures that the penalty and sanctions regime against front running of clients in capital markets is severe and dissuasive. We will require technical assistance from our international partners in the design of these reforms and in advising us of additional reforms that may be necessary. Now, the institutional arrangements and approach of the Financial Services Commission that I described over these past 13 years and probably before, and that have been highlighted by this particular case in question, cannot take us into the future.
Please remember to subscribe, like, share, and click